Hey, I'm Quincy and I'm a radio personality. But just like you, I'm always wanting to make better health choices for myself and, of course, for my family. Now, that's why I've teamed up with my friend Dr. Dean Tyndall and the fine folks of New Life Naturopathic, the creators of new-lifeweightloss.com, to bring you a podcast focused on giving you the information you need to make the best health decisions for you and your family. Now, that's going to be without sway from what mainstream medicine has become. Now, this podcast, Pursuit of New Life, we're going to release one each Friday. And we're going to focus on debunking the mainstream medicine myths now associated with naturopathic holistic medicine, while giving you clear insight into ways you can make your health a lifestyle and not a jump from fad diet to fad diet. Experts in the fields of biochemistry, chiropractic, physiology, women's health, and much more will weigh in on a range of topics, all designed to open your eyes, expand your knowledge, and bring you to new life. Now, be sure to subscribe to Pursuit of New Life on all the podcast platforms, and also follow us on YouTube at newlifenaturopathic.com, and be joining us every Friday for Pursuit of New Life. Welcome into Pursuit of New Life. Thanks so much for stopping by the podcast. We would encourage you to download and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and of course, find us on YouTube if you get the opportunity, because we'll have all kinds of extra fun there for the people that actually want to watch a podcast. And you can find us on YouTube under New Life Naturopathic. We have the New Life Naturopathic team with us. Dr. Tyndall, how are things today?
Doing good, Quincy.
Doing good. Okay. Dr. Stuber, how are you?
I am fantastic, Quincy.
Fantastic. Ooh, all right. Miriam, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Great. Fantastic. Good. All right. We got that going the way around. Yeah. So follow up on the back to school episode, and you guys just proclaimed everything and said this was going to come home with my kid, and I ended up with strep in my house. So, first time I've had strep since I was in high school, and it came after we did the back to school episode. So it can happen to everybody. Just
heed our warnings then, right, Quincy?
I'm heeding. I'm heeding. I'm learning. So. We are going to talk this week, though, about something that we all have in our house. Well, most of us. Maybe Dr. Tyndall doesn't, but
I do now because anyhow.
Because other people live in that house.
Other people brought it in.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we'll get there. We'll have this conversation. So it's something that we all want to have in our house because of the direction that things have gone over time. And Dr. Tyndall's about to make everybody stirred up. So if you've ever needed to ask a question of the team, I'm guessing this is the episode that is probably going to do that. So I'm going to direct your attention for the YouTube viewers on the bottom of the screen. If you have a question, this is where you can email, because we're going to be talking about sugar this week and how sugar is poison, sugar kills, all the things. And so Dr. Tyndall, why don't you go ahead and stir up the hornet's nest right off the bat and tell us about sugar today, and we'll get started.
Yes, the lovely, most addictive drug in the world. They put it in everything. That's all your processed food. Again, that's why we kind of talk to patients and people about, cook your food, single ingredient foods, because pretty much they put sugar in everything. And we're going to show you some pictures here later. But I tell patients and everybody, sugar is poison. And the definition of poison is it's a substance that can cause injuries, illness, death, especially by chemical means. It's something that is destructive and fatal. So sugar definitely falls squarely into that definition.
Well, if I was one of those podcasters that had the little sound effects, I would probably have a dun dun dun.
There you go.
This is courtesy of Dr. Stuber. Sugar, the sweet, delicious poison, for those watching on YouTube. So there you go.
Yeah, it's terrible. Well, it's terrible. The reason it's everything, it's because it is highly addictive. When people have sugar. And then Dr. Stuber probably talked a little bit more on this, but I'm going to touch on it. But as soon as you put sugar in your mouth, it changes you chemically. Your body already starts, your heart rate will change immediately. And the other thing it does, you drop dopamine. Feel good. You have that, that pleasure response from it. And that's why it's so highly addictive, because everybody wants more and more and more and more. And the problem with sugar, I call it the Indian's revenge. More people have been killed by sugar, That's how they've paid us back from what we, happened in the past. But people, we would deal with diabetes problems and issues and all these other problems. And how it actually, a big reason this all came about, especially in the modern history where we put sugar in everything, is they just released this about a month and a half ago. There was a study done in the 1960s because after World War II, everybody started having heart disease. People are dying from heart attacks. And it's because I think we talked about in an earlier podcast about the processed food industry. Mm-hmm. So they just released this here just about a month and a half ago that the researchers from Harvard were bribed by the sugar industry to have the conclusion that it was the fats in our diet that created heart disease and not sugar. And what's happened from that, just like a lot of research that's out there, and a lot of things that it can start with one erroneous research article, and then of course it's from Harvard, so everybody assumes that it must be true. So what happens? They start to build, and everybody references back, and you can see this in social media, with all these myths that go back, and you can kind of trace them back to the original myth. And everybody builds on that myth. And the problem that we have is our government and doctors and healthcare places have put into policy based on that fraudulent research of the no-fat, low-fat diet that started in the 70s. And so there's two things that taste good simple carbohydrates and fats. So when you take fats out, guess what you have to put into everything to make it so people like it? Sugar, of course. And there's many forms of sugar out there. So when you're reading labels, I tell patients, read the labels. Anything that ends basically in ose, like maltose, fructose, lactose, oses, are sugars. They're just a way to hide sugars into your ingredients. And and one of the most dangerous things ever they've came out with was kind of I know it's kind of a little bit off subject, but there's a TV series on Netflix. It was about the Nazis going to kill people in the future. And one of the things that they were going to do, they developed a new product to sell to Americans to kill them. High fructose corn syrup.
Wow.
So, but it does. It kills lots of people. Diabetes. When you kind of come back to, and this is why we always preach to people about. They hate about hearing about it, but we always talk about the diet. That's why we put our program together, is because people don't know what they're doing. There's too much erroneous and bad information out there, and so you got to get that sugar down, get the blood sugar levels down, because it's related. And then we got a graphic here later. It's related to so many diseases. It kills people.
Well, before we started to record this episode, a conversation come up that I wish I would have been recording. So there's a lot of depth to this conversation about sugar, because everybody's going to ask, well, what about fruit? What about this type of sugar? What about that type of sugar? So why don't you guys, start that again? Start that again, because it is a complicated issue when you really start thinking about it. And Dr. Tino, you made the point that I'll say right off the top is just make sure you're talking to people that know what they're talking about, like New Life Naturopathic, of course, would be a great source. So what about that with people that are already sitting there in their minds right now thinking, well, I've got a batch of apples or I've got a bunch of bananas. Are you saying that I can't have those? Those are sugar. So where do we go with those conversations?
That's where that's going to be dependent on your health. There's a lot of factors that come into play with some of that stuff. So if you're already a person who's overweight, you're a diabetic already, you're having these sugar handling or sugar maintenance problems in your bloodstream, and especially if you start running the labs appropriately and you're looking at fasting insulin levels, and how much your body's producing insulin, it's going to be dependent on the person. So if you're in pretty good health, your blood sugar levels are low. Like I keep mine, I fast and I watch myself real carefully. I have an apple, especially like a green apple. And on our program, we have green apples because those are the lowest sugar content of all the apples. We have them in there once or twice a week, because you have some of them, but and also like a half a banana, the best berry. But if you're a person who's out of control, blood sugars, then you can't, a lot of times you can't have those things. You have to have them very minimally. So it's, again, it's dependent on the person, but it's still sugar. You got to be careful. And the other thing that we run into with patients is we tell them, people, oh yeah, you can eat fruit. So what happens is, if you're going to more of a plant-based diet, like for example, our eating program, a lot of plant-based food in there. There's, your meats, we have the meat intake and protein intake, but a lot of it's plant-based, a lot of vegetables and all that other stuff. But we still try to keep that ratio about 80% vegetables, complex carbohydrates from vegetables, and about 20% from fruits. And those fruits, we try to keep people mainly on the berries, the blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, some melons, because that sugar content in that fructose content in there is a lot lower. So it's not going to, spike your blood sugar levels and have detrimental effect on you.
All right. So do you guys have anything to chime in here? Because before we started recording, everybody had an opinion on this.
Well, I would like to interject a little bit about what I've seen practice. Women will ask me, they don't want to give up those sweets. And I will tell them the two greatest things you can do for yourself is, number one, throw your scale away, and number two, stop eating sugar. And the questions that will come at me, that number one is, I hear, what about maple syrup? And it kind of shocks me that people, some of the things that they just don't understand, that anything sweet will spike your blood sugar. The other thing they ask me about is sugar substitutes, such as sucralose, stevia is a big one. And the problem with when you eat anything sweet, even if it's something that doesn't spike your blood sugar, which that is very rare, Dr. Tyndall can tell you, it makes you crave sweets. And then what happens is sugar is more addictive than heroin, it's more addictive than cigarettes. So you want to reach for it, like Dr. Tyndall said, it's a feel good, it's quick energy, it triggers our brain. The other thing is, the number one sense that we have is smell as far as food. The sense of smell is what first hits you and makes you want to eat something. And the memory, like I can speak for myself, cookies baking or bread baking, that was the reward. Like when I went to school, like, oh, you come home and you smell the chocolate chip cookies, or my grandma would bake bread. So how I keep it simple is I tell people, just avoid number one, anything white, with the exception of cauliflower and lean meat, because everything white has simple carbs that will make you fat.
You're talking about enriched stuff, like different things that have been stripped of nutrients, like our white bread and our white. Yeah. Okay.
Anything refined. A lot of things, meats and things, like when you go out to eat, a lot of things are soaked in sugar water. They add sugar to just about everything. So, and they give you the calorie count, but anything that has simple carbs is going to stimulate chemistry that, number one, spikes your insulin, which it goes around in your bloodstream. But I tell women to keep it simple and makes your blood sticky. Sugar causes cardiovascular disease. It will kill you. Like, people get diabetes from eating too much sugar, and they think, oh goodness, my pancreas and I don't feel good. They don't understand the risk of it turns your arteries hard, it creates cardiovascular disease. And I think the studies show that 80% of learning disabilities that are not genetic SNPs, are directly related to the consumption of refined carbs, basically white flour and white sugar. So anything sweet, for the most part, is going to spike your blood sugar, or it's going to make you crave more sweets, and you just never get off. You just never get out of that cycle of addiction.
Miriam, I know you said you wanted to talk a little bit about your journey with sugar, and I'm sure there's others out there that are thinking about, well, I've already had this much sugar in my life. How do I fix this problem? So we'll let you kind of come from that angle today.
Yes, thank you. And so, yes, to continue on what Dr. Tickle already mentioned, you know, some of it is common sense, but a lot of it is not. And unfortunately, there's a lot of miseducation or lack of education on sugar and the detrimental effects of sugar, specifically and especially simple sugars. And the problem is, you know, all of the um, all of the food industry and the food companies out there, um, you know, it's kind of just like with the pharmaceutical industry. They have taken over, um, you know, what we consume daily as Americans, and you know, unfortunately, with social media and news and advertising and marketing, you know, all that does not help, and it makes it even harder, you know, to stay away from sugar and easier to crave. And so I remember when I was a kid, I you know, I used to drink the sodas, I used to, you know, eat the cakes, I used to consume a lot of sugar. And I remember, I believe this was maybe fifth grade or beginning of middle school, or actually both, um, when they finally started implementing some education. And me being the curious kid that I was, you know, kind of did a little more research. And I remember what got me the most was this documentary that they showed us, and it was kind of a one of those required assignments where we would have to watch a documentary and then write a report about it. And um, that really stuck to me is when they talked about, you know, what sugar can cause and all the diseases and the diabetes. Basically, the both the before and after pictures of what happens to people if they continue consuming sugars at this rate, and what happens in your body. And I, you know, it just caught my attention. And luckily, as a kid, I was very responsive to that. And I always like to do experiments on myself. You know, I've always been that, you know, experimental type of, you know, personality. You know, that's what led me into lab sciences. But um, I basically stopped consuming sugar cold turkey. And, you know, I remember, you know, and even soda too, all at once. And, you know, I decided to, you know, and I even told my parents about it. I was like, Mom, Dad, why didn't you tell me sugar was? And then they were like, what are you talking about? We didn't know it was that bad. So, you know, unfortunately, you know, even adults, you know, as adults, we're not educated enough on these things, and everyone's so busy, and, you know, they just kind of want that little spurt of energy, you know, and that's the worst part is, you know, we think that all these things are, you know, giving us energy, and we don't know how bad, you know, short and long term the effects will be. So, you know, after a few months, I tried to go back to consuming soda, and I tried to go back to eating sugar. And I remember how just queasy it made me. It was just the most interesting phenomenon. You know, when you stop something, you know, you stop craving it, your body just can't even take it anymore. And so, you know, that's the important thing is, you know, you are what you get yourself accustomed to, you know, not only you are what you eat, but also what habits form. And, unfortunately, our bodies give us leeway to develop habits, even if they're bad. Right? It's kind of the contradiction of our mental state of mind versus our physical being. And so a lot of the time, unfortunately, those things contradict, especially when, we have things that are kind of slow killers that we don't know are bad for us, but long term, and over decades of research, when we finally come to find out that they're going to be bad for us, just like smoking and alcohol, all that other wonderful stuff.
Right. Well, the comments have already been made on this podcast about, how bad sugar is and how worse it is than some of the things you just mentioned. Dr. Tyndall, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that sugar does to the body. You everybody's kind of alluded to it. It's bad. We shouldn't be doing it. This is the things that it can do. Here's another look, though, that'll actually kind of break down some of the things that it does to us. And Dr. Tyndall, if you want to go over it.
So we just talked, we touched on a little bit about the brain, how the dopamine it releases out, sugar. And when you see all these other organ systems being broken down, how the way that we actually measure it, and most doctors actually don't know this. The reason we run your A1C is you're looking at your how your proteins, which is your red blood cell. I tell people how much sugar sticks to everything. So the easy analogy is, like I said, it's like I tell a lot of patients is sugar. When you consume sugar, it like barbecues your organs. And everybody looks at me like, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, sugar sticks to these organs. It sticks to there's receptor sites and polysaccharides on the cell membranes of all the cells of the body, and sugar sticks to this stuff, and that's why you run your A1C. A1C is red blood cells, and they're looking at how much sugar it's basically stuck to the red blood cell.
Yeah, I think it was Dr. Stuber that said earlier that it makes your blood sticky.
Yep, and it makes everything sticky.
Yeah.
So what happens when sugar it attaches to the cells and these receptor sites? It alters the function of the cell. It downregulates it, messes it up. Yeah. So
I think most people looking at this, if you're watching on YouTube, New Life Naturopathic on YouTube, most of these you can look at and say, oh yeah, I can see where sugar could contribute to this or that. But you mentioned something earlier about gut health, and it says it here on this graphic too, that it throws off gut health, interrupting the microbiome of the digestive tract. I don't think a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's going to mess up my gut health. They think about all these other things, but that's a big part of what sugar is doing too.
Yeah, so that's your people with your candida or your jock itch, your athlete's foot. Believe it or not, that's how it shows up on your external, also with the skin. So it feeds the bad bacteria. Your good bacteria, it just disrupts the whole gut biome. And then also fake sugars do too. They found out later on, like the sucraloses and the manufactured sugars, they also disrupt the gut biome. And the reason that's so important, well, first of all, people who have gut biome issues, you have bloating, gas, constipation, upset stomach, you don't digest very well. You can get a significant amount, over half to maybe over half of your neurotransmitters are made in your gut. So having your gut healthy is kind of a very important thing. And we tend to hammer it. Then, of course, if you throw in like the drugs, like the antibiotics and other things in here, that really disrupts that gut. Then you throw in the sugar. And a lot of women will attest to this, and men too, but more women. You put them on antibiotics, guess what they're having? Real bad yeast infection later on, because it just disrupts the gut. Then you throw in sugar on top of that because you want to have. I'm feeling better, so I can have a treat, and it's a huge mess. Sugar in our cardiovascular system. It's getting a little technical, but in our cardiovascular system, you actually have little hairs that project into the cardiovascular. It's called the glycocalyx. And guess what destroys the glycocalyx?
I'm guessing sugar. Just to throw it out there. Okay.
Yeah. So the glycocalyx, when it gets destroyed, it messes up your cardiovascular system's ability to monitor your blood sugar, your blood chemistry, which leads into a lot of other problems later on down the line.
Well, for those that are not watching on YouTube, we're talking about sugar impacting your brain, your skin, your liver, your kidneys, your mouth, your heart, your stomach, your pancreas, and for women, fertility. And it says function in both men and women, but
and fertility. So the fertility part is your ladies who have PCOS, having difficulties having babies, infertility, right there. And then men. Here's an interesting study. It was a couple of years. It was released a couple of years ago, but the quality of the man's and genetics buildup of a man's sperm changes on what he ate that day.
Interesting.
Yeah, because sperm is being made all the time, whereas women's eggs are made while they're in the womb when they're with their mom. That's why why it's so important for mothers before pregnancy and during pregnancy, even after pregnancy, that you eat very healthy, because what you eat before and during your pregnancy is going to affect not just you and your child, but your grandchildren.
Wow. That's a powerful statement all by itself. That seems like there needs to be a whole episode on that, Dr. Stuber. So write that down. There's a lot of toxic effects of sugar. And again, we've got it listed here for those watching on YouTube, New Life Naturopathic on YouTube. Asthma, arthritis, Crohn's disease, coronary heart disease, depression, anxiety, hyperactivity. Well, that one, most people would probably bring that up, guess that one on their own. Increased risk of Alzheimer's, raised cholesterol, triglycerides. I mean, the list is long of and that's why you wanted to talk about this today, about the killing nature of sugar. So a couple more things we're going to go over before we head out of this episode that Dr. Tyndall wanted to share. And this one comes from our drinks, and we're going to take a look at the sugar content in popular drinks. So for those watching again on YouTube, important, New Life Naturopathic on YouTube, if you haven't found that yet. For those listening on the podcast, we've got a Mountain Dew here. We've got a Coca-Cola. We have a Red Bull. We have a something called Naked that is supposed to be healthy. And then we have in the middle a Simply orange juice. And they all have quite a bit of sugar.
Yeah. So your Mountain Dew has what? Recorded this, and then they got I think that's
77 grams on a 20-ounce Mountain Dew bottle.
Mountain Dew. And then you got 65 grams at a Coke.
Yeah.
And then you're
both 20 ounce. Yeah.
And they Simply Orange, I believe that's probably a 12 ounce?
Yeah, that one looks like it could be 12. Yeah. And there's 31 grams.
31 grams.
That.
Red Bull, I think those are 12 to 16 ounces?
Something like that. And that's 51 grams of sugar in the Red Bull. But here's the one that's going to blow your mind. Go ahead.
This is the one that they sell on the health food store. This is why, again, you get confused. And again, you want to work with people who know what they're doing. Okay. Naked, which is a product that's sold in a health food store, 53 grams of sugar. And I think that's a 10, maybe 12 ounces.
Maybe.
Bottle.
And it's the smallest of all of the bottles that are in this example.
Yeah. So
53 grams of sugar.
So if you probably put them the same size and same volume as the Mountain Dew and the Coke, it's probably as much or more sugar in the Naked product, according to this chart here.
Wow.
Well, that's
ladies, any comments there? That's a lot of sugar in some drinks right there, I tell you.
Yeah, one small little comment. A lot of people get confused with artificial versus all natural, and they just assume that, if it's marked as all natural, it's just automatically better. And that's really not always the case. And I think we need to probably make another episode on just that topic. It's artificial colors and sweeteners. But, just since we're just focusing on the topic of sugar, there are simple sugars and there's more complex sugars. And just like everything else, there is, bad, good, better, and great. And so, sugar falls under the spectrum of that. But the worst of the worst is simple sugars. And even that Naked drink that you're looking at also contains simple sugars as well. Mm-hmm. But we can definitely discuss more of that in another.
Yeah, for sure. You want to add there, Dr. Tyndall? It looked like you were going to add something.
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things that, like Miriam and Julie had mentioned when they were talking. Like one of the things Miriam said, when she was off the sugar for a while, and then she got back on it, she felt sick. And my friends give me a hard time because they're like, "Hey, you got the weakest gut I know," and I tell them, "No, I don't." I said, "My body." I tell them, "Here's what the deal is. This is what when I hear a patient tell us this, I like, yay." I tell people, I tell my friends this. She said, There's the deal. If this room is full of trash, and I throw more trash in it, I don't notice the trash. But if I clean up the room and then I throw trash in this room, I definitely know there's trash in here. I said, that's how my body works. That's how Miriam's body works. That's how Dr. Stuber's body works. Is when we have something that we're not supposed to have, and we occasionally do. Guess what? I feel sick. I feel terrible. I wish, and I regret. I always regret that I ever did it.
Yes.
Yeah, my body works that way too. Just in case you weren't.
All right, Quincy.
Yeah. He said everybody but me.
Well, can I inject something real quick?
Absolutely.
When I first came here, I wasn't very healthy, and I remember to get here, I was drinking those Starbucks double shot or triple shot. When I saw Dr. Tyndall, he goes, "How can you drink that?" And I was like, I don't know. Well, after a month or so of being on the program, I was losing weight. I was feeling great, and we went down to the Dreamery, which they serve gelato, and I can remember eating vividly a chocolate gelato. And I remember I took one bite, and all of a sudden I just felt this terrible stomach pain, and I wanted to throw up. So your body will tell you, like, as you clean it up, your body will tell you that sweets are not good.
Yeah, once you purify your body. Same thing with the soda. When I tried drinking soda, it burned. Like, I couldn't even swallow it. So it's crazy.
Well, we've only got a few minutes left in this one, and there was one more example that Dr. Tyndall shared with me that I didn't expect. I mean, I knew there was sugar in it, but I didn't expect it was this much. We showed you the drinks, and most people probably would say, "Oh, that makes sense." They might have been thrown off a little bit by the organic whatever, or maybe even the orange juice having what it had. But here, let's look at tomato ketchup. For those watching on YouTube, you can see the difference. For those listening by podcast, full ketchup bottle on one side, and then another ketchup bottle that's about a third full of sugar, showing you the sugar content of your ketchup.
And that's that. And then in that tomato, that sugar is actually in a form of high fructose corn syrup, but that's the equivalent amount of sugar that would be in there. Yeah.
Wow.
And just wanted to make one last little point too, that what Julie said, and we see this in patients, when she said, "Oh, you have to give up sugar," and then they start to go, "What about that?" That just tells you how addicted they're addicts, how addicted they are to the sugar, and the fear that goes through their mind of, "Oh, I have to give it up." But the problem I tell patients all the time is the sugar that the lifestyle that we're asking you to give up. Is it worth having the Twinkie to lose your big toes? Is it worth having your ho-ho to have heart disease? And if your answer is no, I really don't want to have those problems, I want to be healthy, then, we're the team to work with you to get you healthy if you're willing to make those changes. And like I said, we got it set out easy for you to follow. We got an eating program that's fantastic. People who do it lose weight. They love the food. It tastes good. We have certain supplements. We use whole food supplements because there's a huge difference between synthetic supplements, which are made for like petrochemicals, versus stuff that's made from food. That we can help speed up the recovery process, help to repair that pancreas, help repair sugar handling, help to repair that cardiovascular disease and things like that. So, again, if you want to be healthy, we're the people to work with. And if you want to, continue with the lifestyle that you're doing, good luck.
That's the bottom line right there.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we have run out of time for this episode. Complicated topic, as most topics are when we get to really, breaking paradigms, really, things that people have thought was true or maybe they don't want to let go of, as has been pointed out. Those are always hard episodes to really fully express the dangers. And we tried to lay out some of the things here from sugar. There are more, and it is more complicated than a 30-minute podcast, just so you know. It's always more complicated. But we encourage you to download and listen to other podcast episodes that we have here on New Life, Pursuit of New Life, and then also, of course, on YouTube, Pursuit of New Life. But would also encourage you to check out the website, newlifenaturopathic.com, if you want to reach out to the team. And then also, of course, the program that Dr. Tyndall was just talking about, new-lifeweightloss.com. Great resource, great place to start, especially if you want to start making those choices that can help you in your healthy lifestyle and what you want to accomplish and what you are willing to do to not have those issues down the road. That's what we do this for, and we would encourage you to download and subscribe as always. And of course, see us next time on Pursuit of New Life.
Thanks a lot, Quincy.
Thanks, Quincy.